Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode 386 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast. There's a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and tonight I'm joined by the greatest hostess in the entire universe, Aaron Paulette. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm just saying that if you're a ROTC student and you manage to get a stateside kill on a terrorist, regardless of weapon, you deserve extra credit.
I mean, I think that seems fine. I don't know enough about how the ranking service is, but it's just one of those, like, can they instate you as an NCO?
I mean, technically you are, because if you're on scholarship, then you take you swear an oath, and so you are technically like enlisted because you weren't an officer yet. So, I mean, whatever. You know what? Let's save this for when we actually discuss it later in the show.
Yes.
So, I'm doing better than last week. I mean, I don't know. I don't think our listeners really know just how close I came to saying I'm completely done with Second Amendment advocacy because of that absolute hatchet job John Lott did. And I'm not 100% sure I'm back either. I'm honestly kind of surprised that I'm here. But yeah, I felt really betrayed and thrown under the bus. And it more than once I ranted, I am done expending, time, energy, sweat, blood, tears for a community that's just going to throw me under the bus the first chance it has. That may still happen. I don't know, but I'm here tonight. And I want to thank everyone who recognized me on my birthday and wished me a happy birthday, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Happy birthday, Aaron.
Thank you. So, yeah, that's me. How are you doing, Weer'd?
I'm doing pretty good. It's one of those I've been busy. It's just one of those. My daughter ended up going up to Maine for the weekend, and so I was like, let's go do stuff. So me and my wife hung out a lot, and then there was a lot of housework and shore work, and I've just been running around like crazy. So and now I got a podcast to do, and so but it's good time. I would much rather be too busy than bored.
Okay.
Oh, fun story. So she was with my mother-in-law instead of my parents. She usually goes and stays with my parents, and we'll visit my mother-in-law because they live in next town over. But this time she's like, no, I just want to hang out with her. And I said, okay. And so, we, talking like, how do you want to do this? And she says like, oh, I'm willing to drive halfway, and we just do the halfway drop off. I said, all right. My parents and I usually met at the New Hampshire liquor store in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is right on the Maine border, and it's pretty much equidistant. And my mother-in-law got horrendously lost. There's a bunch of turns there. It's, if you go look at the map, there's a whole bunch of like traffic circles and things like that. And she took the wrong exit, and it shunted her off to the hinterlands of New Hampshire. And so I just said, like, give me your address and I'll come get you. And then furthermore, that she took a wrong turn going back. I told her to follow me all the way to the highway, and she did not do that. So I said, we'll make it easier. The next town up, over the Piscataqua River into Maine is Kittery, and there happens to be a large outlet store called the Kittery Trading Post, which also happens to has a massive gun shop on the second floor. And I said, why don't we go there instead? And, I'll park in the back where there'll be lots of empty parking spots, and we'll easily find each other. And did that, dropped her off. Pleasantries, how you doing? Thanks so much. Safe drive. And then turned to my daughter and said, you want to go see a really big gun shop? And she's like, uh-huh. And so we ended up going, and it's a big store. And so we were wandering through, we went up to the second floor. We were wandering through the hunting section, and she literally says to me, I think you were making up the part about there being a gun store. And then we turned around the corner, and there was the gun store section of it. And it is huge, and it's floor to ceiling guns, so much stuff. And her eyes just was like, she had never seen that many guns before. Essentially it was the scene from The Matrix. We need guns, lots of guns, except for every gun nut in the world knows, they're all pretty much the same gun on those racks. It can be nice if they're all different guns. In this case, they're all different guns.
I thought your daughter was kind of ambivalent about guns. She has one, she goes shooting with you, but she's definitely not the gun nut you are.
She is not the gun nut, and I will say she was more excited about, she's a bit of an art nerd, and so she was definitely impressed at all the different finish patterns and colors and things like that for the guns. So she was excited about the pink guns and all the different types of camouflage patterns on the guns, and the ones with the brightly colored grips and the ones that looked cool.
Huh.
And that's
I'm a big fan of Muddy Girl myself.
I don't know Muddy Girl. Maybe
Okay.
I have. I think I've seen it. I'm doing a quick search. There it is, Muddy Girl camo. Oh yes, yeah, that is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she was just looking at all that stuff. I saw a couple of Grail guns there, but the price was not that great. They were both in the used rack, but they were not really, really good prices. And I didn't know what their policy was, because the laws keep changing in Massachusetts. So I didn't know if they would be. I've definitely had guns. I picked up a 454 Casull Ruger in at the Cabela's in Maine, and was pretty much to the point where they were going to put it in a box and ship it to Massachusetts, and I'd pick it up there, and they just went, no, we don't ship to Massachusetts, just because the handgun laws are so confusing that they're just we're just going to have to, we may just have to pay to get it back, and it won't be available for sale during that dead time. So we just don't do it. Understood. But so didn't end up doing that, but we did go to the knife counter, and we bought knives. So my daughter got her first multi-tool. She is very happy with it.
Mm.
And
what kind?
It's like a Gerber Mini. I forget exactly what the name is, but essentially it folds up into a little square, and when it folds open, it's the main tool is scissors.
I have one of those on my keychain.
Yeah.
Those are great.
Yeah, no, she said, oh, this looks really, really cool. And I'm like, I told her, I said, all right, look, ideally it's something $50 or less. And, I'm willing to consider, if something's really nice and $70, I'll buy that for you, but it needs to be something that you really like. And she saw that tool, and she's like, I really like this. I said, multi-tool's a good thing to have. And so that was what she settled on. There was a purple pocket knife that she saw, and then we got it out of the thing, and it was just a friction lock. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't have a lock on it. I'm not crazy about that. She goes, yeah, me neither. So away we went. And I will be talking at the yep, that's it. The Gerber Gear Splice. That is the exact one. Yeah, she loves it. And, but yeah, so we bought knives, and we looked at a lot of guns, and that was fun. So that's a nice little daddy-daughter moment. So, yeah, we got, mostly good news. So, I'll start with this first one. I think David sent this one to me. But the Tennessee lawmakers have both houses have passed. It's going to the governor's desk. I assume he's going to sign it, because he's overall been pretty pro-gun in Tennessee. A bill that would bar landlords from prohibiting tenants from keeping firearms in their rental homes. I think this is a no-brainer law.
I mean, there's really nothing to talk about here.
Yep.
Because, I mean, just, prima facie, it makes sense. And like the second to last sentence here, supporters of the bill argued that renters should not lose the ability to defend themselves just because they don't own their homes. Yes, exactly. Period. End of sentence. So I'm honestly surprised that they had to pass a law because it just seems like a basic human right, but people are like that. So, all right, it's good that they're passing this law.
Yeah, and it's further a no-brainer in the fact that specifically rental, because there are differences for, short-term versus long-term rentals, difference between staying in, say, a hotel or an Airbnb versus signing a lease for an apartment or a rental home. And, there's things like a landlord just can't come into your unit. He's allowed in, it is his property, but by signing that, long-term rental agreement, he loses a ton of rights over the property because it's now also your private dwelling. And so you retain a lot of rights, to that. It can't be, obviously the police could come and ask the hotel manager to let them into your hotel room, and then they could come in and search your hotel room. And that is perfectly legal without a warrant. But to search a rental property, you absolutely need a warrant, no different than that. They can't go and talk to the landlord and say, will you let us in? The landlord can say yes, but that he doesn't have the right to go in, let alone the police. They need a warrant. And so this seems like an absolute no-brainer. And honestly speaking, the reason why I put it is, number one, it's good news. I like talking about good news on the show, but also just kind of as an awareness of some people may not realize that there are rental properties that forbid people to possess firearms with that. And I believe one was actually public housing for a while prohibited. At least I don't know if it was federally or if it was by state, but I believe that there was a lawsuit that actually made it so that public housing specifically cannot have any statement on the lawful ownership of firearms.
I remember that too.
Yeah. So this is a good law. Pretty sure it's going to pass. I mean, it's one of those, like, who does the article even say, like, what the opponents of the bill said?
Yeah, it was the very last sentence of the article. Critics argue landlords should retain the right to set rules for their own property. Which,
actually is not a terrible argument, except for, again, the landlords don't have that, don't really have those sort of rights, because once they allow people to go get in there, it's still their property, but they can't just say, all right, cool, you're trespassing now, get out. Nope. You gotta do evictions and that sort of stuff. And again, you can't enter it. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. I mean, yes, landlords can set rules for their own property, but they don't have the ability to defy, what is it, the supremacy clause in the Constitution? Mm-hmm. Just because you're a landlord, you can't say, okay, look, I know you're Muslim, but you can't pray in my own, in my property. No, you don't get to do that. You get to do things like no pets, yep, because pets aren't mentioned in the Constitution, but the freedom of religion and the right to keep and bear arms, those are mentioned.
Yep. And furthermore, it's pretty obvious to say, if you've got large dogs, those claws are tough on varnished floors and things like that. And cats scratch things, and maybe the pets have accidents and that makes odors and needs to clean stuff up, and people are allergic to pets, et cetera, and all that. Like, if your gun's doing damage to the property, like, the landlord's already protected for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure it's a liability issue, just for the same reason that companies won't let you carry a gun to work. Because it's just, yeah, you might do something that would get the company sued.
Yeah. And the solution to that, and again, I say that any chance I get, just to put that bug in people's ears on what we need to do is, if you are injured and or lose a family member or something like that in an office building or employment capacity that barred them per termination for lawfully carrying a firearm, then like you need to sue because they took away their right to self-defense. So therefore they need to supply it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And
if I am ever robbed or otherwise assaulted in a post office,
mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lawsuit.
Yep. Though I mean, I think it's not official just yet, but they have. It seems to be on its way that you'll soon be able to carry in post office because they had that one court case, and I will actually. I had to go into my post office for some business, and I took a peek. They don't keep the gunbuster sign that they have for it on the door. It's off in the corner of the post office. And I made it a point to go over to that corner just to see, and it was gone. So, and that had been there for ever, as long as I've lived here, which is like 16 years now. So yeah, that's, there's definitely some stuff that's moving. I ended up looking and I'm like, oh, is it official that you can carry in the post office? But no, the post office is still officially saying that firearms are not allowed inside the federal property of a post office. But again, there's been a court challenge, so they may not be so crazy about pursuing it if you get caught with a firearm lawfully carried and you're doing nothing wrong on postal grounds. But I am not a lawyer.
Yeah, but Oddball is.
Yes, Oddball is. Oddball is not a lawyer. He can't defend himself, so I do need to kick that in. All right, this next one is technically bad news, though it's comically bad news, in my opinion. So I apologize to all the Virginians. I have not been doing a great job at keeping up with the status of the huge suite of gun control bills that have been pushed forward since the recent election, where essentially the whole state went blue, and so and unfortunately, again, there's nothing partisan about the Second Amendment, but establishment Democrats are the people that are always promising more gun control, and this one specifically is someone noted from the House Bill number 110, which is essentially a bill, from my reading, does not allow the carry on capital properties, even with a concealed carry permit. And it has all the provisions for what happens if you are got caught carrying a firearm on this property, but specifically states that this provision does not apply to any member of the General Assembly who leaves a handgun unattended in a motor vehicle, the vehicle parked in any parking structure or reserved for members of the General Assembly. So, yes, you get to have guns. It isn't super, it isn't quite as bad as some people are making it out, because it still says that no, even if you have a concealed carry permit and you're a member of the General Assembly, you still can't bring it into the Capitol building itself. But you or I, if we had a gun in our car and it was discovered, could do prison time. But these people, they are allowed to arm up on their way to and from work, which is of course also a huge factor of gun-free zones, is yes, I work in an airport or I work in a federal building, I'm not allowed to carry, or I work at an employer that prohibits me from carrying at work. Well, but can I have a gun in my car for my drive between here and there? And maybe I stop places before I go to work. Maybe I stop at a convenience store to get an energy drink or to get a pack of cigarettes on my way to work. Or I stop at the pharmacy on the way home to pick up some of my medications and things like that. All of these places are places that can get robbed, that can have trouble, where you could get mugged. So wouldn't you want to have your gun with you? And if carrying a gun at work and having a gun in your vehicle while you're at work is grounds for termination. That might be a bit too risky for you. So this is, like I said, it's bad that they're pushing so many of these laws. Again, I haven't been paying attention to what the status of them. As far as I know, I don't think any of them have been signed into law yet, but I know some are doing a lot better than others, and some have been shot down. But in this case, this one is specifically saying, yeah, if you're like, we're enforcing these laws on the people, but it doesn't apply to us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think everyone knows how I feel about hypocrisy, so we'll just take that as read, shall we?
Yes. So let's go. Just absolutely awesome bill here. Let's see this bill here, House Bill 4106. I find it hard to believe that this isn't going to pass. Is essentially expanding in West Virginia. Allows constitutional carry to also apply to any legal adult. So before, you needed to be 21 years old to carry. You didn't need a permit, but you needed to be at least 21. Now all you need to do is be 18. If you can vote,
hell yeah,
you can carry a firearm. No permits necessary, as it should be.
Hell yeah.
Yep. I believe in Vermont. I remember reading this. I don't know if it's still the law of the land, but you can conceal carry. And of course, Vermont doesn't issue a permit. It's just, they don't really have constitutional carry. They just, it's still 1791 as far as carrying of firearms, up there. And, but I believe 16, if you would need to have an adult, you can't buy a gun, but an adult could buy and give you a gun, and then you could legally conceal carry it in Vermont. Do not trust my legal advice. Double check with your laws if in fact you are 16 or someone you know is 16 or 17. But but in this case, I could see arguments on it's a minor. There's many things that they can't be trusted to do. Maybe carrying a deadly weapon is one of those things. I'm not going to die on that hill. But 18 to 20-year-olds, look, either you're an adult or you're not.
I feel like this is something we discussed 2 weeks ago.
It's exactly something we discussed two weeks ago. And
okay.
So, yeah, but it's good to see there's more going through with this.
All right.
Yep. This one, the next one here is one that I don't know what the chances are, but I really wanted to throw it in here just because the NFA is under severe assault, and they're coming exactly. They're coming at it with so many angles and so aggressively, and this is good because number one, the more shots you get on target, this is why they have military weapons have full auto. The more you get on target, the more chances of you scoring a lethal hit. So whether it be the fact that no, it's not a tax law, it's a gun registry is the one that's going to get it going, is just a straight up, NYSERPA test. Is it going to get it going? In this case, this is Temple Gun Club is suing Pam Bondi, saying that the Hughes Amendment on the Firearms Owner Protection Act was actually overstepping the power of Congress. They did not have the power to close the registry on machine guns in 1986, and so they are saying that was unconstitutional and an illegal legislative action, and so therefore the Hughes Amendment should be rendered null and void.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. And also, may I add, very similar to how we're starting to see some federal laws getting rolled back, marijuana's been lowered down the classification scale as far as a drug goes. It was originally is it statute
Class 1?
Was
Schedule 1.
Schedule 1. I couldn't remember if the bigger the number was the worse or the lower the number the worse, but it was in the absolute highest scale on there is no medicinal value for this. There is, you will get addicted to this. And anybody who knows anything about the pharmacology of marijuana knows that none of that's true. And so it is still illegal federally, but there is a lot less restrictions on it now. And part of that is because so many states have passed either medicinal or recreational marijuana laws, and the sky has not fallen. The only thing is it's sometimes a little bit stinkier in places. And so you get a higher public sentiment. So again, the more people that are pushing for repealing of the NFA, and of course, obviously, we've got a huge amount of people getting suppressors and short-barreled white rifles and short-barreled shotguns and any other weapons, thanks to the fact that it's now a $0 tax stamp. And of course, we have things like the forced reset triggers and things like that give the appearance of full auto while legally not being so, that people will, it's moving the Overton window is what I'm trying to say. And so the more we do this is maybe it'll get down to, again, I've said, it's not just the courts. The legislatures can do stuff. The legislatures pass the NFA. They can make it go away or they can amend it. So this is also going to apply pressure to legislators to start taking a closer look at this really stupid law.
I just want to say that 1986 in general was terrible. And as someone who lived through it, I know of which I speak.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day because that was the Challenger disaster.
Challenger disaster in like January. And I don't quite remember when the whole Chernobyl thing was. But yeah, Chernobyl happened in 1986. The Hughes Amendment, obviously we were just talking about that, happened in 1986. And I know that there was something that affected me personally as a comic book nerd that happened back then. I feel like there was something else, but I can't quite remember what it is now.
We were talking about this in chat the other day, and that was when you were mentioning that Hughes Amendment and Chernobyl as well, and I was noting that it happened to be 1986 was the year that my elementary school teacher pulled out The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein and read that to the class. And I got the impression that was the first time that teacher had read that book as well, because like at the end, I remember just like she put the book down and just the whole class, you could have heard a pin drop. And this is like elementary school. Come on, these kids, we're eating glue and climbing the walls. And so you could have heard a pin drop. And one of the kids just said, "Why did he cut down the tree?" And the teacher just went, "I don't know." And then we moved on. We did math, and very similar to the Challenger disaster. We followed this teacher, all through her NASA training and all that. And there was several like TV specials where she was talking about what it was like to be an astronaut and what she was going to do up in space. And then we watched her blow up and die. And then we went to lunch.
Mm. So I'm going to just briefly explain to the very few people who care about what I was saying. So 1986 really set up the awful grimdark of the 90s in terms of comic books, because you had in 1986 Watchmen and the Dark Knight Returns. And they came out like almost simultaneously. And on the one hand, they proved that comics could be adult and they could be grim and they could be cynical and political and violent and yeah, they were doing good things because they were, questioning power, heroism, and myth. It's not a bad thing to take a cynical look at something rather than just blindly accepting it. But the industry as a whole didn't learn that lesson. What the industry learned was readers want joyless, brutal, dark deconstruction forever. And so, that's how we got horrible, just, interminable storylines. And, okay, what year was it? I don't know if it was, it doesn't matter. But just as an example, okay, you had the big death of Superman. Oh yeah, I want to say that was like 91, 90, something like that.
Somewhere around there.
Okay, so Superman was killed, and we knew he was coming back, but still, it was this long, drawn-out soap opera thing. And then Batman had his back broken by Bane. And it was just this long, unrelenting thing of awful that I said, what happens next? Is Wonder Woman going to be raped? And the fact that was plausible just says just how dark and grim and awful it was.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, that didn't happen. But as someone who was like seriously into comic books at the time, and you can tell by my passion, I still have a lot of residual feelings about that. 1986 did bad things to the comic book industry. So I'm going to stand by my assertion. Oh yeah, and also, God, when was Crisis on Infinite Earths? I don't know if it happened then or not. But yeah, it was just, it set the stage for all the endless reboots that DC had. And so, yeah, 1986, just a really bad year for America as far as I'm concerned. That's my hill. I'm going to die on it.
I gotcha. It's kind of like I have a little bit of a bittersweet feeling towards the movie Forrest Gump, because on one hand, it's a spectacular film and I really enjoy it. And also, Tom Hanks is a marvelous, serious actor. But I don't think he's ever really done a comedy after Philadelphia. And I'm kind of bummed about that, because it's one of those, like, used to be really funny. Like, Bruce Willis after Die Hard did mostly action movies, but he still did some lighthearted and some funny movies. Mm-hmm. and all that. And it's one of those, like, because he started off as he was a comedy. He was, moonlighting. And so, yeah, I get the idea of, okay, we can have gritty, dark comics, but also let's have some whimsy still too.
Mm-hmm. So Weer'd.
Yes.
You mentioned Forrest Gump. What generation was Forrest Gump?
He was a baby boomer.
No, I think you'll find he was Gen A.
Well played. Well played, Aaron.
Thank you.
All right, getting us back on the rails. This one is this one's also a little bit bittersweet. Of course, Canada has their new essential firearms ban. They essentially banned the vast majority of semi-auto firearms on the market, and then now they're essentially going to they've essentially pulled out the grandfathering clause, where, I mean, originally they had it so that, like, if you had an AR-15 or I'm trying to remember, but just if you had a semi-auto rifle that fell under this that it wasn't exempted from this, you could own it, but you couldn't take it shooting. You couldn't, you could only take it to a gunsmith to have it worked on, or the police to surrender it. And you could not transfer its ownership under any circumstances.
You couldn't even pass it down to your children.
Correct. You couldn't sell it to somebody else. And when you die, the only legal thing your family could do is either contact the police to come collect it, or use that legal exemption to transport it to the police for destruction. But they've promised that there's going to be a buyback, and the buyback is based on market value for the gun, but not really. And it's generally below market value, and the law has no provisions for any modification or rarity or things like that. Like, I've got some odd Mosin Nagants. I have some interesting firearms in my collection, but they would just go, like, if it's any other run of the mill gun. And so it's you're going to lose money. You'll recoup some of the cost of losing, but overall it's just destruction of wealth. And the government of Saskatchewan, being a provincial government, they can't overstep or supersede any of this, but they found essentially a loophole in the law that says that a province can designate somebody as a guardian of a firearm that is prohibited. And
yeah,
so,
it says here, acting on behalf of or under the authority of a provincial or federal government. And so they have got this act that would deem them as agents for the government, and therefore they'd be allowed to possess and store the guns until they're given fair market value through the federal buyback. And this is... they're not even hiding the fact that they're doing this in the hopes that it will delay long enough until the original buyback law can be fought and defeated in the legislature. And so it's we are absolutely circumventing federal law, but we're using federal law to do it. And so this isn't a loophole. This is using the law exactly it was intended, with the unspoken suck on it. and I think that's delightful.
Yep. Yeah. It's bittersweet in the fact that Canada has every right to do this. They don't have a Second Amendment. That's another reason why I put this in here is we need to remember how great our Second Amendment is, and we need to protect it. We need to keep it strong, because if we let it get either repealed or gutted, like, things can go real bad. And so this is both a warning. Furthermore, like, there's nothing stopping the Canadian government from just saying, fine, just for Saskatchewan residents, we will pay absolutely fair market value for the guns just so we can collect them and get rid of them. But also, I mean, number one, Canada doesn't really have the money for it, so they may not be able to afford that anyway. But also, they might just be, I don't know what to do. And now, instead of having to have, like, essentially a bonded warehouse or something like that to hold the firearm until it either, can be bought back or just surrendered and destroyed. Now, your own gun safe at your home can be an official storage location for a prohibited firearm. And so you still can't take it to the range. You still can't use it. It's still, I don't even know if you could take it to a gunsmith to have it worked on, but at least you can have it in your home. You can take it out to care for it, put a new coat of oil on it and that sort of stuff to make sure it's in good shape. And again, as they said, hopefully as they're fighting to get this terrible law overturned, they might be able to it might buy enough time so that property isn't lost forever.
Mm-hmm. Well, good on you, Saskatchewan.
Yep.
Keep fighting.
Yeah. We need a whole lot more of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's one that you shared with me. So why don't you take this one, Aaron?
All right. So I remember however many weeks ago we talked about the NRA suing the NRA Foundation, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so thanks to the blog NRA in Danger, we get a lot more information, and the NRA themselves filed an amended complaint, and we get a lot more context. And so the short version here is that, as we mentioned last time, the anti-reform directors, which was known as the cabal within the NRA, even though they've been purged from the NRA, they made themselves trustees of the NRA Foundation. And a large part of the foundation's purpose was to financially support the NRA. And donations to the foundation are tax deductible. And it can give that money to the NRA so long as the funds are spent for purposes permitted a foundation, such as education and training, but not politics. And so The lawsuit is because the foundation stopped contributing to the NRA. It stopped doing what it was created to do, and thus the lawsuit. And so it seems like this is another calculated move by the ousted cabal members, because I'm not going to get into this, but there's details which indicate they saw the writing on the wall, knowing that they would be ousted, and they put this into play, or at least they started the wheels turning, well before the reformers took over. And so that means that when they set this in motion, they were still on the board of the NRA, and therefore they had a fiduciary duty to the NRA to do their jobs, and they didn't. And so it wasn't just that this was shady, but this was... So I don't know what the penalties are for not doing your fiduciary duty, but... Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure how to finish that thought, but the point being was, for lack of a better word, there was a conspiracy. They planned this well ahead of time, and they violated their oath, their purpose, their whatever as directors, to deliberately harm the National Rifle Association. And so I hope that the NRA wins, and these corrupt people in the foundation lose.
Yep, and it sounds like they certainly seem to have a good case for it. So that is good news about bad news.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
and you know, if our resident legal expert Oddball wants to take a look at this filing and actually weigh in on it for next week, that would be great.
That would be great. All right. Next up, we got the story that we've actually been alluding to. Do you want to take this one away, Aaron?
I mean, we didn't allude to it. I actually referenced it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at this point, I think I know what everyone else knows. And that was, there was a former military, I want to say reservist? No, Army National Guard, who was in there for like 4 years, and he left as a specialist, which is an E4, which is basically a corporal with less work. And you don't even have to work hard to get promoted to E4. You simply have to be there, punch the time clock, and you keep your nose clean, and you will hit E4. So, not particularly ambitious or skilled. And while it is our policy not to mention the names of these shooters, I am going to say that the shooter had a very Muslim name. And right before the shooting, it is alleged that he shouted Allahu Akbar. So, given what's going on in Iran, I don't think that it's a stretch to say that this was an attempted terroristic shooting, especially because he tried to shoot up a class of ROTC students in Old Dominion University. Now, for people who don't know what ROTC is, there are, I think, three ways to become an officer in today's army. The first is that you go to an academy, and you get your college degree there, and at the end you're commissioned as an officer. The second way is called Officer Candidate School, and that is primarily for people who are enlisted and don't want to be enlisted anymore, and so they already know how to be military because they are NCOs. They just need to learn how to be an officer. The third is ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps, which is for college students who can't get into the very selective and elite service academies, but they still want to get a college degree, they still want to become officers, so you take military science as an elective every 4 years. And so you take it just like a college class, and you study what it is to be in the military, and you've got field training exercises, and you've got leadership labs, and you've got all these things that is supposed to prepare you for becoming an officer. And what is, I don't know, you may not find it interesting, but between the MS3 and the MS4 year, the students go to a camp, and it is basically basic training, because everyone who goes into the military needs to understand certain fundamentals. And so even though a lot of these things are taught by ROTC, it's good to have them, I guess, certified is an acceptable term. You know, it's not enough just to pass a class, but, you know, you will have actual drill sergeants who oversee their training. And so, you know, this summer camp is basically boot camp for the ROTC students, just to see if they can hack it in the real military. And then assuming they pass, then their senior year is just the final polishing on, okay, you've proven that you have the chops. Now we're going to finish making you into an officer. I did this long explanation because I think it's really important to the conversation. So this person who walked in asked if it was an ROTC class. When they said yes, he shot the instructor several times. Now, this instructor was Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw. Now, Lieutenant Colonel is the top end of what I would call middle management for the Army. So you've got field grade, you've got flag grade, and you've got command grade. So field grade literally means you go out in the field with the troops. That's your second lieutenant, first lieutenant, and your captains. Major is the beginning of flag grade, and you basically sit behind a desk and command the field grade troops. And so that's major, lieutenant colonel, and to a certain degree colonel. And then after that, you've got the flag grade, which are your generals. Now, here's the thing. Lieutenant colonel is where a lot of people's officer careers stop, because it's as much political networking and politicking as actual military work. And so you need to be adept at all of the political machinations in order to get promoted to colonel. So when you are a lieutenant colonel or a colonel in an ROTC cadre, that means that you are in charge of that cadre. You are the department head of military science. You know, you aren't just some professor, you are literally running the entire thing. And so for the head, okay, I don't know this guy was the head, I'm just operating on what I know of ROTC. But for the head of the ROTC cadre to be teaching a class tells me that these were very advanced students. And they knew what they were doing, and so I figure they were MS4 students who'd already gone to summer camp and had come back. And so they knew what to do. They had received all sorts of combat training. And so when the guy came in, shot their professor, and looked like he was going to shoot them, they knew to take him down, and they did. And I think it's funny that the FBI is being circumspect about it, and they say the students were in the classroom when the gunman opened fire and stepped in, rendering him, quote, no longer alive, unquote. Mm-hmm. It's not quite the censorship workaround on the internet where someone is unalived, but it's like the FBI version. And so what I have heard from various sources is that one cadet pulled a knife and while they were dogpiling on him, stabbed him to death. I don't know what kind of knife. I don't even know if this is true. It's just what I've heard. But what we do know is that at least one of the cadets got a stateside kill on an insurgent and did so without a gun. And so let's see. This was Army ROTC, so I have to say hooah. Well done. And that okay. First of all, just stopping a shooter is impressive. Stopping a shooter when you're unarmed, even more impressive. Neutralizing the shooter fatally, just bravo. Mm-hmm. Absolutely stellar. Whoever this student was, first of all, very likely to be branched infantry, because this was just straight up grunt goon stuff. Second, this is probably going to be the first time a butter bar, when he receives his first command, is going to receive the respect of his troops. Because when the sergeant major introduces, I assume it's a him, introduces him to the command, he will make it plain that the new LT, stabbed to death the man who shot his colonel, and they're going to go, okay, new LT knows what's up. So good for him. I honestly think service medals for all involved, because when you are at the high levels of ROTC, you are drawing stipend. And in order for the military to pay you, you have to be on their payroll, so you technically enlist. That's what I did when I was on ROTC scholarship. I raised my hand and I swore an oath, and that meant I was enlisted. I didn't really have a rank because I was a student, but I was still receiving pay. And if we had gotten into World War III and they really needed warm bodies, I could be, I wouldn't even be drafted. I was already on the rolls. I could be assigned to a combat unit. And so what I'm saying is that it's not a stretch that they could give medals to these kids because they're already in the system. So yeah, give them medals for bravery, for gallantry, for whatever. And I think it'd be really cool to have these freshly minted butter bars showing up with combat tabs and bronze stars or something like that. And this it is of course a tragedy the instructor was shot, but this really warms my heart, because these students said, oh hell no, and they neutralized the threat in proper Army fashion. And it's got to be demoralizing to be a terrorist and look at that and see, a whole bunch of unarmed, they probably weren't teenagers anymore. They were probably like in their early 20s, but still basically college kids defeated an armed gunman. Mm-hmm. And so as you can tell, I am really proud of them for this. And I'm very sorry that Colonel Shaw was killed. This shouldn't have happened, but I think he would be proud that his troops avenged him immediately and with extreme violence. Yeah.
We were talking a little earlier about the if the workplace may forbid you to carry a firearm, or you might be in one of the states that makes it very difficult for you to carry a firearm, and the more difficult it is for you to carry a firearm, the more often you will have incidents like this. This was a college campus. No guns were allowed. There is some discussion of whether the pocket knife or whatever knife that was deployed in this defensive action was allowed per the student handbook. But either way, it's one of those, like, if you have no other options, just extreme violence can sometimes be the best option, and it's not necessarily a death sentence.
I mean, if anyone decides to prosecute him or suspend him, you just know that the entire JAG Corps is going to be on this like white on rice.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we've got the man who sold the firearm to the killer is under arrest for selling that. I'm trying to remember if there's some more shady stuff going on with the person who it looks like he's had multiple firearms that were recovered at crime scenes that he has purchased. So it seems like this was kind of his side gig. I might be reading the article a little bit longer. They might be a little bit more misleading or misunderstanding. But again, we have an instance where, I just added it to the show notes, Aaron, so you may not have seen it. But I've been hearing it a lot, and so I dug it up. The killer, in fact, was charged with probably while he was in the army, with giving what does it say? Giving aid to the enemy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He was involved in a sting where someone from ISIS was recruiting him to do some sort of terrorist activity, and the person the ISIS guy introduced him to was like FBI, some sort of undercover LEO, and so he was sentenced to 11 years in prison in 2017 for providing material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization, the Islamic State group, aka ISIS, and was released 2.5 years early. Released December 2024. Because he completed a substance abuse treatment program, and that allowed him to reduce his sentence.
Yeah, this is, number one, I don't know if that necessarily, the substance abuse programs obviously are great. Obviously, we should be doing the best we can to rehabilitate and give prisoners the best chance to re-enter society. But I don't know, just maybe it's also the 2020 hindsight that this guy turned out to be, again, a terrorist, and he killed a good man who was just teaching a class of ROTC students. But is one of those, is he saying completed a drug, I was on drugs, and drugs made me pledge allegiance to ISIS. I've been drunk a bunch of times, Aaron, and I've never surrendered my passport or pledged allegiance to the enemy of the state.
Mm. Well, I'm sure that if you work real hard, you could manage that.
No, I usually fall asleep before that happen.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so this is just another. We've got all these laws, and just keep all of this stuff in mind for in the event that that somebody tries to use this event or something similar to it as a springboard for future gun control, because they're always looking for an excuse. Mm-hmm. And the last of we've had a bunch of news stories, but the last of the news story, this was from a Virginia politician. Let's see, his name is Garrett McGuire, a Democrat from Fairfax, and essentially he's stating that because these unarmed and one with a pocket knife were able to prevent a mass shooting using just their bare hands, and one of them had a knife, that, you know what, you don't need a firearm, and therefore people shouldn't be resistant to the gun control laws that the Democrats in Virginia are trying to pass. And that is an S take, as the kids say these days. And I will further note that the first thing that popped into my mind is that, just because they were successful doesn't mean that that's the best thing possible. Is you don't necessarily need anesthesia to have surgery. Plenty of people were operated on without anesthesia, both before the advent of it and in emergency situations. But the right tool for the job is awful nice. But the second bit is that the college campus had rules against knives. ROTC, I've heard some reports that ROTC may have been exempted from that, though I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, no, you couldn't have a pocket knife on that campus, at least as a regular student. So that shoots that right in there. And then furthermore, I mentioned I was going to talk about one of the knives that I got, and let's see if the mic will pick it up. And then That is it's called a Reate EXO, and it is a gravity knife. It's really cool. Really, really cool. Look it up online. Maybe I'll throw one of the videos of it in the show notes. But essentially, it's got like a little clamshell design, and when the clamshell opens, the blade is free to drop out under gravity, and then you can you close it up, and it's locked in place, and you have yourself a locked knife. And then all you need to do is open it back up, and the blade drops away. It's kind of like an out the front automatic knife, except for there's no springs. So it's really, really cool. And even though I carry an out the front automatic knife most days, and they were recently illegal, this thing is still illegal. And I'd love to just drop it in my pocket, because I've definitely been walking around the house with it in my pocket, because it's a fun little fidget toy, and it also opens packages and breaks down boxes. But seems to be like the places that restrict gun ownership and like to pass gun bans are also the places that like to ban knives. So
aren't gravity knives, like in general, highly illegal?
Yes, as a general rule, they are. I've actually been watching a lot of videos on this knife just because it's cool, and I just wanted to see what other people had to say about it. I've been posting videos because my description probably doesn't help you that much to how this thing works and how cool it is. But yeah, a lot of people have pointed out that it is the most illegal knife gravity knife. And the other one that you see a lot for just like generally banned is ballistic knives, the knife that has like a spring in it where if you pull the spring, the blade will shoot out. Those are most often illegal in most states.
I seem to recall that there was a Soviet era bayonet that actually launched the blade because it had like a .22 caliber blank inside it. Does that sound right to you? I'm trying to remember if it launched the blade. I know that the Soviets had it was a bayonet style knife, but it legitimately actually held 22, like the crossguard had like 2 or 4 .22 caliber barrels in it, and it would fire it. There was a trigger that you could pull out of the handle, and it would fire them in sequence. But yeah, I'm almost remembering what you're talking about too. There might have been something where it either fired the blade, or I think there actually might have been one where there were channels inside the blade. The idea that you would stab somebody and then pull the trigger and the hot gases would be blasted into the wound channel. It's all silliness and all that. And this knife is no more dangerous or scary than any of my other knives, but just for some strange reason, someone decided that, it's a gravity knife. It's using gravity to open and close. That's bad and scary. And it's illegal in most states and all that. And I think that sucks. I also have here on my desk a SAP, which is also illegal in most states. And it's really just a fun little club. So, yeah, there's a lot of dumb laws out there. And I think it's ridiculous, the fact that, I'm carrying a 45, but oh no, I have a lead paddle that I could hit someone with. Oh, be still my heart. So yeah, that's it. Go to the show notes, watch that video of this politician doing that, and just, thank goodness that our opponents are not very bright. So Jewish holidays seem to factor into... No, I'll try that one again. Factor into... Good God. Okay, here we go. So the vast majority of Jewish holidays seem to be described as, they tried to kill us, we're alive, let's eat. And in David's segment, he explains why that sentiment is so relevant today.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. Earlier this month, that thing that never happens happened again, and again, and again, and again. So in this segment, I'm going to talk about the recent series of attacks on the Jewish community around the world so far in March. I'm sure I'm going to miss some, There have been a lot, and there's only so much I can process in a single installment. I started working on this segment after the attack on Temple Israel in Michigan. I've already had to update the list twice. I really hope it isn't out of date by the time of recording on Monday, much less when it's released later in the week. The holiday of Purim began on March 2nd, and Passover begins on April 1st, making this a particularly sensitive time to have to deal with all of these attacks. As many of our listeners are aware, anti-Semitism is reported as being on the rise over the past few years. Personally, my opinion is that it's the same amount, but people are less reluctant to express it openly or even proudly. Some of you may remember scenes of students being chased across campus, blocked from accessing student faculties, and even assaulted at colleges across the United States in the days following the October 7th attack. We also have people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Nick Fuentes fanning those flames using century-old anti-Semitic tropes. Even members of Congress have gotten in on the act, as when Marjorie Taylor Greene revealed our orbital space laser, which used to be called our secret orbital space laser. Thanks a lot, Marjorie. Currently, there are about 15.7 million Jews across the entire planet, approximately 0.2% of the world population of 8 billion. Prior to World War II, our numbers were estimated at 16.6 million. We likely won't reach that level again in my lifetime. According to recent data, about half of us live in the United States, with another third residing in Israel. No other country has more than 3% of the remaining population. This is what's known as the core Jewish population. It includes people who self-identify as Jewish, as well as people who have Jewish parents and haven't adopted a different religious identity. This number also includes converts to Judaism, as well as people who declare themselves Jewish, even if they haven't gone through the conversion process. As this should make clear, we are a tiny drop in the bucket in any country outside of Israel. Even in America, we only make up just over 2% of the population. Now that we've put our size in perspective, from October 2023 through February 2026, there have been 4,628 reported hate crime incidents directed at the Jewish population in the United States. In comparison, over the same time span, the next largest data set, which is Muslims, had 627 incidents reported against them, even though, by some estimates, our population sizes are similar. This is out of a total of 12,492 religion-motivated hate crimes over that reporting period, according to FBI data. Which brings us to the most recent incidents. My list starts with the shootings at 3 Toronto synagogues on March 2nd, 6th, and 7th. Thankfully, these attacks only caused relatively minor property damage with no injuries reported. Then, on March 9th, an explosion erupted outside a synagogue in the Belgian city of Liège. Some listeners may recognize that as the home of Fabrique Nationale. Again, no injuries were reported, though that building, as well as those across the street, took moderate to significant damage. This was followed by the attack on Temple Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan on March 12th. In this incident, a person drove their car through the entrance serving the Early Childhood Center, where 140 children, faculty, and staff were present. Through the grace of God, none of them were harmed. Temple security engaged the attacker, and one of them was injured. He is expected to make a full recovery. In addition to at least one firearm, the attacker had incendiary devices in his vehicle. These started a fire that engulfed the structure, leading to 30 police officers being treated for smoke inhalation. They too are expected to make full recoveries. According to the FBI, the attacker died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head while engaged in a firefight with Temple security. The reporting on this incident was particularly disgusting, with headlines such as, "Family of Michigan Synagogue Suspect Killed in Lebanon by Israeli Airstrike." What wasn't reported was that those family members were active participants in a terrorist organization. On Sunday, NPR put up a headline that read, "In a small Lebanese town, grief and fear follow the Michigan synagogue attack." Not grief and fear over the attack on the synagogue, but grief and fear over the death of their former resident and what it might mean for them. The usual suspects on social media were quick to grab these headlines in attempts to somehow justify the attempted murder of American children. Later, some of them tried to walk that back and delete their posts and comments, but I and others managed to grab a selection of screenshots, because the internet is forever. On the same day as the attack in Michigan, there was also an incident at Trondheim Synagogue in Norway while an event was being held at the temple. In this case, 2 people were arrested before anything untoward could happen. The next day, March 13th, there was another attack, this time arson at a synagogue in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. The fire was extinguished fairly quickly, and again, no injuries were reported. Finally, the last item on my list involves an explosion at the Amsterdam Jewish school in the Netherlands on March 14th. Once again, God protected us and no injuries and only limited damage to the structure were reported. While civic leaders and politicians were quick to call out these attacks as unacceptable, they were far quieter on doing the same regarding the speech that naturally leads to these attacks. A number of them having shared or otherwise repeated inflammatory claims made by the likes of Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Nick Fuentes. Sadly, this is nothing new. Nearly every Jew in the world, no matter their country of origin or residence, has experienced some form of anti-Semitism, whether verbal or physical. We have long been the canaries in the coal mine. It's not a role we enjoy, but it is one that we've been repeatedly forced into. For my fellow Jews who may hear this segment, we are always our own first responders. We have to act under the expectation that no one is coming to save us. We are ultimately the only ones responsible for our safety. Take your destiny into your own hands. Consider buying a firearm or other defensive weapon and learn how to use it properly. Reach out to one of the volunteer instructors at Operation Blazing Sword or your local range. Without the ability and willingness to apply effective defensive force, never again is just a catchy slogan. Since providing medical aid is at least as important and much more likely to be needed than to physically defend ourselves, also consider taking a first aid, CPR, or stop the bleed course. Urge members of your congregation to do these things as well. Tishmru al atzmechem. Take care of yourselves.
Drink some wine. We're celebrating.
That old Pesach story. The angels are rejoicing because the Egyptians have just drowned in the Red Sea.
I didn't say we're rejoicing. I said we're celebrating.
And God said to the angels, "Why are you celebrating? I've just killed a multitude of my children."
You didn't finish the story. The angels respond to God. They say, "God, we're celebrating because when the people hear what happened to the Egyptians, they'll understand your point."
Which was?
Don't
Fudge
with the Jews.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
So I wanted to cover these attacks in the show, but I thought David would do a better job than either of us would. So thank you so much, David. He pointed out the fact that it's very emotionally draining to deal with such a tough subject, especially, again, he's a Jew. He's the subject of a lot of this crap. And this level of hate is wholly unacceptable. And as you can tell from David's talk, it's a bipartisan issue. There's people on both sides that are standing up for this just horrible hate. And I don't want to get political. The ACP is nonpartisan, and this really isn't a partisan statement, but it's crossing in there. But I'll say that those listeners who are churchgoers, many of these anti-Semitic attackers are not a huge fan of Christians either. So they that whole poem of the first they came for the Jews and I did nothing because I was not Jewish should hold a lot of water for you. Furthermore, they don't really care about atheists that much either. And so I'm not going to paint with a broad brush, but I will say that the type of people who are steeped in this kind of hate and intolerance and enough to be driven to do a violent act, they're not going to be that discriminatory on who they deal violence to. So, carry your guns, carry med kits, be vigilant, because most people are good, but there are bad people out there.
Carry extra ammunition too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say that you have to carry like 50 or 100 rounds, but carry a spare magazine.
Yeah, that's a fair point. John Correa often points out that he has not seen a self-defense shooting where someone has reloaded and made a difference when it was a civilian. He's seen lots with cops, but not with private citizens. And most of these instances, you're only up against one or two of them, and there might be more.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, just, magazines also fail because they have springs. They are, I wouldn't say that they're meant to be disposable, but you kind of need to consider magazines disposable.
They're consumable parts.
Consumable. Thank you. That's a much better term. And so just, it's not going to, overburden you to carry a spare magazine. And it's really cheap insurance for it. For whatever reason, the magazine in your carry pistol might stop working. And so, you got a spare.
Yep. It's cheap insurance, even if you're like me and carry a Sig Sauer.
Well, but at least you don't carry a P320.
That's true. That is true. So I've obviously done a bunch of interviews with Casey Harrington of Koa Athletics, and in my talking with her, I gathered that she was not born into the gun world, and so I wanted to hear her origin story. I am pleased to welcome back to the Assorted Calibers podcast, Casey Harrington of Koa Athletics. How you doing, Casey?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I am great. And so, I didn't want it to be the setting, but we've been talking a little bit, and so I don't want to be insulting. So you're a lady. How did you get into guns? The ladies aren't into guns, which is the most insulting question ever. But again, everybody has their own origin story towards how they got into the Second Amendment community and the Second Amendment world. And I would love to hear yours.
Yeah. So I did not grow up around firearms at all. There's a lot of influencers out there who have, and I like that I haven't, because I kind of put a new perspective on the firearms industry as a female and those looking to get into firearms, because it can be a scary tool, and if you've never touched it, you're looking at it like, well, if I touch it anywhere, it might go off, right? You don't know how it works. So I like to share that, I did not grow up around firearms. The reason why I got into firearms was because my husband, so we lived in a converted school bus, and that we converted ourselves, and we just had our daughter, and I was pregnant with our son, and my husband deployed. We just moved to a new location. We were in an RV park. The front door of the school bus wasn't the most secure, and I couldn't sleep the first night he was gone. And that was the moment that I realized that I relied on him too much for the safety of our family. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get my concealed carry license. At that point, my husband had taken me shooting. I was comfortable around firearms, but I've never been to the range by myself. I never had to of course, I always was thinking about the safety, but I knew I had someone watching me. So if I did do something wrong or was doing something wrong, I would get called out. And so I had never been to the range by myself. And that week I went to the local gun range and asked about concealed carry classes. They're like, yeah, you can come and take our class. Let's go. You can sign up, come back, and we'll do the, shooting test. And I was like, okay. And so I was going to go and, get ready, get set up, maybe fire a couple rounds, get comfortable. And the lady was like, all right, let's go in, let's go do it. I'm like, wait, what? I need to warm up. I need to take my time. I need to figure, make sure I'm going slow and make sure everything's right. And so on top of being nervous, I was more nervous because I didn't have that prep time. But it was good. It went well. I obviously knew all the rules and made sure I was safe, but it was just, I didn't have anyone calling me out. And then I have this instructor who was basically judging me for the shooting portion of getting concealed carry license. And so I did that. I got my license, and that's kind of like the starting point of me getting into firearms.
Yeah, and so of course, obviously, Koa Athletics, you're offering some leggings that are concealed carry friendly. They allow you to essentially loop a gun belt into them. So whatever carry option you were looking at and or using before Koa Athletics enters your life, you could still pretty much do that for most things. And so, talk about, all right, now you've got your concealed carry permit. Did you have a gun that you specifically wanted to carry?
Yeah, I had, my husband had gotten me, when did he get it for me? I think he got it for me after he got it for me after his deployment. But so we had a SIG 226 for our home defense. And then he ended up getting me the 365, the SIG 365. And so that's been my concealed carry ever since.
Two excellent choices.
Yeah. And I like SIGs. I've shot Glocks before, and the grip just wasn't great for my hands. And
you and everybody else.
So although I did recently shoot a single stack from, I forget what gun it was, from Glock, and I was like, okay, that's not that bad. So
I will also say personally, just to throw out, because we did throw a little shade at Glock, but I will say that my father-in-law, before he passed away, I ended up converting him over from a Smith & Wesson Model 66 to a Glock 19, and one of my nephews carries a Glock 19 as his daily carry, and I've shot both of those, and actually I'll be surprised that the compact frame Glocks point and hold it and feel in the hand a lot better than the full sized ones.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't, like I said, like I'm not, my main purpose here is to provide a safe way to carry a firearm in athletic wear. So I'm not someone who knows a ton about different types of firearms, different brands of firearms. I know that, Glocks are reliable. I know that SIGs are reliable, and I know that there are some firearms out there that aren't reliable. So, I get that much, but like my huge, like, you ask me anything about safety about firearms, I gotcha. And eventually I would love to get to the point of, suggesting more firearms or different firearms, helping people find, what firearm is good for them. But, at this point, it's like my main focus is safety. But I would love to instruct at some point. But anyway, or I'm digressing, but yeah, so I forget where we were.
Well, I'm getting towards the fact that you're solving a problem with Koa Athletics, and so right. I kind of want to lead you into bumping into the problem of how terrible women's clothing are to conceal carry.
So anyway, so then I got my concealed carry permit, and now I needed to figure out a way to carry. And I had gotten a couple of options online of concealed carry leggings, and what I noticed initially was just they weren't comfortable. And then secondarily, and thankfully, was that they were not safe. There's a lot, unfortunately, of ways to conceal carry for women that aren't safe, and mainly due to lack of trigger protection and lack of retention. There are people who think that I will not use or wear something that does not let me use a Kydex holster. That is the safest way to carry, especially with kids. You're dealing with a lethal tool, so why not carry in the most safest way, right? I'm not going to take any shortcuts. And so there are people who think, oh, this material's thick enough, like I'm not going to be able to compress the trigger through the material. Well, what if you get into an accident and like a steel bar just like punctured that material that was, thick enough for your fingers, but maybe not thick enough for that. Or, you flip over your handlebars, or you bend over a fence. And this actually happened with a girl who was wearing concealed carry leggings that weren't properly made for safety, bent over a fence and shot herself. And she had a very, very long road to recovery. So
I'll interrupt real quick and note that I remember hearing a story of a man who actually shot himself with, he was using a knockoff of the Thunderwear holster, which I believe is essentially gone. It fits in with a holster design that you would not like in the first place, though I will say that the actual name brand Thunderwear seems pretty good. There are far worse holsters. I'll leave it at that. But it was a thinner, cheaper version of it, and essentially he was bending over, I think, to clean up after his dog, and the fabric of his jeans folded in enough to bunch up where the trigger guard was. Yeah, and you got to remember that, like, it wasn't the fact that, like, oh, it's just the jeans bunching up, but it's one of those, like, think about how much you can squat. Like, the amount of force that you can put on that holster, like, you think a 12-pound trigger, God, that's a really, really heavy trigger, but putting 50 pounds of body weight onto a gun is super duper easy to do without really any heart lifting. And you can put 100 pounds or hundreds of pounds of body weight onto a gun, depending on what activities you're doing. So that's an absolutely valid statement.
Yeah. And there's a story similar to that. Someone was wearing a belly band and they were playing with their dog, and they actually had a safety on their gun, and the dog managed to not only disengage the safety, but also pull the trigger through the belly band, and ended up having the gun go off. And so that's just, you might think, your fingers, the finger test is nothing's gonna happen. Well, there are scenarios and very, like, plausible scenarios that this can happen. So I will not do anything with a soft holster. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is the retention. There are a lot of holsters that don't secure to anything. So if you move a certain way, your holster and firearm can fall out. And I did a test with several different products on the market of just seeing how long does this holster last, doing burpees and doing jujitsu and doing CrossFit. And every single time, like, at some point during one of those exercises that I was doing, the gun fell out. And I used a weighted blue gun for all of this, so it wasn't my actual firearm. But
I was gonna ask that, but I assumed how much you've talked about safety in the talks that we've had. I didn't expect that you'd be using a live firearm.
Oh yeah, no, I use a blue gun to do all the testing, to just test different things on the market. And there are a ton of influencers that are promoting these products, and you can do 10 squats, but eventually the gun's going to fall out.
Yeah, no, that is a really, big deal. And again, women's clothing, like I pocket carry, and just to find a woman's carry that I carry a 365 in a pocket holster, and to find women's clothing that would have the space to accommodate a gun even that small is very, very hard to find, though pretty much 90% of what I wear will fit it no problem. So yeah, there is a lot of issues that are going on with women's clothing as far as concealed carry goes. Actually, so one thing I heard you mention, I kind of wanted to focus it too. So I assume leggings are like what you live in. Yeah. Yep. And that's something I always say to people who are first getting into concealed carry is don't change your wardrobe. Figure out what you wear and figure out how to conceal into it, because suddenly switching over to, like, one day Casey's wearing leggings and workout tops, and now head to toe 511 tactical.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so that is great. And so yeah, you found a problem and you and you've solved it with Koa Athletics.
I have a bunch of PDFs on my website, or if you go to my Instagram, you can comment the word that I have in the caption, and it'll give you guides on, what makes a safe holster, what makes an unsafe holster, what are, ways to draw and reholster safely, and then also how to style, how to conceal, finding your high peaks and your low peaks and your peaks and valleys. what kind of clothes help conceal better than other clothes and all that stuff. So if you're struggling with that, there's some guides on there to help you out.
Oh, I mean, that is a great story. And thank you so much for coming on the show. That's Casey Harrington of Koa Athletics. I would say Casey's story is similar to a lot of people. And so I will just say that if you are the security lead in your family, make sure the members of your family are competent as well, because sometimes you may go out of town for a few hours or a few days. And that's you want them to be able to fend for themselves without you there. And I thought I'd tell a quick story of I went up to Bar Harbor, Maine.
Bar Harbor.
Yep, Bar Harbor. And I took a class at the Jackson Labs, and so I was up there for a week, and I was driving home. It was getting to be late at night, and my phone rings, and it's my wife, and she said, "Are you home?" And I think I was in southern Maine, or maybe had just crossed into New Hampshire, but I wasn't even in Massachusetts yet. And I said, "No, I'm still probably, easily another hour away from home." And she said, "Because I hear someone downstairs." And I went, "Well, you know what to do. Go get the gun, and then call 911, and stay, shut the door in the room. You don't need to go out, but call the cops and see what they can figure out." And she ended up getting her gun. We've got a safe in the bedroom. Got her gun out and was ready to go. And I was very comfortable that she was trained enough that she would safely handle that firearm. And ended up not hearing anything anymore, so she didn't end up calling the police. And when I got home at that point in time, we've since remodeled. We had a mudroom that was essentially in a screened-in porch, and so we would take our shoes were unsecured, and somebody was clearly bumbling around. I assume it was maybe like a drunk kid or teenager, young person or something like that. But somebody, like, the shoes were all knocked around and all that. Don't know if it was someone got confused or what happened, but it wasn't particularly nefarious, and that was that. But if my wife didn't know how to shoot, I would have absolutely felt a whole lot more nervous in that instance.
Yeah. So my mother is 86, and while she does know how to shoot, it's been a while since she shot, and she never really had good technique to begin with. I mean, she was able to get a concealed carry license, so she was able to have, acceptable accuracy according to the state of Florida. But she really didn't have a whole lot of confidence in it and didn't want to go shooting with me the way I did. She was just busy. And so I can't remember the last time she went shooting. I think it's been like 10 years or whatever. So I understand what you're saying, but when I leave her alone, I worry because I don't know if she would be able to properly defend herself. I've given her the tools, but okay. So she's got some sort of snub-nosed .357. I think it's a Smith, back in her bedroom. And I've told her that if she hears something, just to stay in the bedroom and call the police and, only shoot if someone opens the door. I don't know if she'll remember to do that. But my big concern is that if someone comes in, will she be able to do it? Mm-hmm. I can very easily see her not shooting, not so much because of, it's a human being, I don't want to kill him, but more like, we always have a dog. And so we don't know how that dog would react to an intruder. And so I could completely see her going, well, I don't want to accidentally shoot the dog. And so she hesitates and then gets hurt. So that puts me in a really uncomfortable place. So, I mean, I agree with everything you say. It's just sometimes it's not that simple.
Nope. And sometimes I definitely know several people whose partners do not like guns at all. And their concession is, I will allow you to have them. Just I don't want to be involved in them at all. And, that sucks, but we do a lot of things for love. I live in Massachusetts. So, so it's just, it's you make the best with what you've got. And I would just say, have that conversation, at least you talked it over and you did the best that you felt you could.
I hope I've done the best that I could.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying I won't know if what I did was enough until it happens, and I hope it doesn't. I hope I never find out.
And the good news is most people never do.
Yeah.
But you know who absolutely does their best, Aaron?
Our listeners.
Our listeners. Thank you, each and every one of you, for listening to this show. We really appreciate you. We hope you enjoyed it. But we have to give some very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To be on Patreon, go to patreon.com/Assorted podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast. Plus, they can get bonus content like the ACB blooper reels, the ACB film tracks, and the ACP mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I've got a blog. It's weerdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
One of these days, I'm just going to stop saying it because I'm going to be upset that I haven't felt creative or productive in a long time. But today is not that day, so you can still theoretically get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
Well, even if I do get burned out with Second Amendment activism and podcasting, I know for a fact that Weer'd won't, because he's a junkie and this is his drug. Our motivation is assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everyone.
I wish that wasn't so accurate. Good night.